All right, so I think we are live and everybody is here. My name is Danielle Riendeau-Sutton. Thank you for joining us for the home buying seminar, the first one that we're having of the year 2021. I am here with a few of our industry partners, some of the best in the business. So I'm excited to get that going. Let me share my screen and we can get this going. Hold on one second. Oh, no, I have to wait for the wizard behind the curtain to allow me to do that. But in the meantime, we are here with Jason Kilduff from Kilduff Mortgage. He is our loan officer extraordinaire. And then we are also here with Richard Witt.
How are you?
Are you guys here? Jason, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. All right, and now we have access so that I can share my screen. So give me 2 seconds and I will get in here. Here we go. All right. Can you see this?
Yep, I can see it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. And here we are. Okay. So welcome everybody to home buying in today's market. We are the Miale team at Keller Williams here with Kilduff Mortgage, Keating Agency Insurance, and the law office of Richard Witt. The best in the business, as I think Cynthia Burke just gave us a little plug. So she's always the best. All right, so let me see, just get my bearings. Here we go. All right, so quick introduction onto who we are. I think I just did that. What we're going to go over today is your path to home ownership, kind of the basic 6-step process. This is just really a broad overview of the home buying process, how you're going to obtain your mortgage or how to obtain a mortgage and any questions that go along with that. The closing process with your attorney, what that looks like, title and getting your title done, all that good stuff, any clauses that we have to take a look at. And very important, protecting your investment with homeowners insurance and a few things to look out for on that end. And then we'll do questions and answers at the end. But anytime you guys have any questions, you can pop them up. I'm looking at my Zoom screen right now. I know our wizard, Lauren Miale, is watching our Facebook. So if there's any questions that you have, feel free to interrupt, pop them up on our screen, and one of us will be happy to answer. I just want to make sure that I have Ryan on here too. Yep, there he is. Okay. You guys are muted, but if you have there's any time that you want to interrupt me, feel free to do so. And I'm just going to get rid of my partner, Charlie, here, because he is going to keep interrupting. All right, go down. All right. So the challenges of working from home, Jason and I were just talking, the last time that I did a home buyer seminar, we were at a brewery and it was a lot of fun. The only thing that's good about this one is that the bottom half of us can still be in pajamas. All right, so a little bit about us. The Miale team at Keller Williams is we are an award-winning real estate team that together I would be embarrassed to say how many years in the industry we have because there are some old dogs on the team like myself. But we've been around for a long time. We've been top producing for a long time. We are #1 in Connecticut. I think right now we're #5 in New England. In 2020, we closed over 400 houses as a team. So this is not our first rodeo. Our plan for 2021 is to more than double that. So we know what we're doing and we know who to partner with. And one of our favorite things to do is to help people live that dream of home ownership. So quick on where we are. I am going to be your buyer expert in terms of the real estate portion of this seminar. Jason Kilduff is going to answer any questions about the loan process, obtaining a mortgage, what it looks like on an appraisal, what happens if a property doesn't appraise. Richard Witt is our legal expert, so any questions you have about how the contract looks, what rights are protected, what the contingencies are, Rich is awesome on that. And then Ryan can tell us what to look for in New England. We're dealing with a lot of older properties. We have older roofs. We have things that insurers look for. So he can answer some of those questions. All right. And again, guys, if I am missing out on anything, just feel free to interrupt me. A little bit about me. I've been doing this for a really long time at a high level. A couple years ago, I partnered with Matt Miale and joined his team over at Keller Williams. Prior to that, I was with Prudential, which got bought by Warren Buffett in 2014 and became Berkshire Hathaway. So I've been doing this for a long time, but this is only the second brokerage firm that I've been with. And the main reason that I joined Keller Williams is because we are just surrounded by like-minded people that want to do this at a very high level and service our clients the best that we can. And then later on in our seminar, we'll go over the specifics too, so that you guys know how to contact and what areas of expertise Jason and Rich and Ryan are all into. But in terms of our path to home ownership, if it's okay with you guys, the way that I would rather do this rather than me talk a whole bunch is kind of go through this as like go back and forth panel, jump in anytime you want and in process of this. I know this is kind of the long version of the whole buyer seminar. So I'm going to spend more time over on this page. I think it's a little bit easier. But before we jump there, I just want to point out kind of the process and where you start right here is really where we are now. Your information gathering. If you decide that it's the next that you want to move forward and make a home purchase, your first step is really hiring a real estate agent. And I'll go over why that's important. But the term in far as the process goes, once you hire that real estate agent, or actually before you hire that real estate agent, you're going to want to have a buyer consultation. And that buyer consultation, you're going to have everything tailored towards you. It's going to be specific to your needs. Are you a first-time home buyer that you really don't know anything at all in terms of the process? Are you a seasoned home buyer where you've done this 4, 5, 6 times and you know exactly what you're looking for and what you want to do? Are we talking cash, mortgages, what the state of the market is right now? So getting into detail on all of this specifically for you is going to, you'll hear about all of that in your buyer consultation. So if after this seminar you decide, yeah, I want more information, the best thing to do is raise your hand. Myself or somebody on our team will have a consultation with you and we'll walk you through the whole entire process and really more what it looks like in your scenario. But the first step is hiring an agent. Right after that, you're going to want to talk to Jason and get your pre-approval. Then we're going to get on the hunt on the MLS, start going to see houses in person. Once we find that house that you are, definitely starting to, you don't want to fall in love with until we get the contract signed and we're really until we're through the inspection. But once you're starting to really dig on a house and we make an offer, we go ahead and do that. Once we have an offer accepted, you're going to go ahead and put through all of your application documents to Jason, make sure everything gets through underwriting. We're going to get through our inspections. We're going to get through our appraisal. In terms of your loan, you're going to go through the processing and underwriting. You're going to get what's called a mortgage commitment. Again, Jason's going to go over this in more detail. And one of the things to remember during this entire process is that when you hire a real estate team like ours, you have you have an entire team advocating for you during the entire process and holding your hand through this. So it takes something that can be a little bit intimidating and it makes it a really nice, fun, exciting process because we've done this plenty of times before and there's really nothing that can surprise us and nothing that we can't figure out and get to the end with. So back to commitment. Once we have that commitment, Richard makes sure that we have a nice clean title, that you're buying a house with no liens, encumbrances on them. You're going to make sure you have that product insured. We get our clear to close. We do a final walk through the property once the seller has completely moved everything out. And then we go to the closing table and you are a homeowner. So let's go to this next page and we'll kind of start from the very beginning. So hiring an agent, and then we'll switch off to Jason and to Ryan and Richard. But again, if at any point you guys want to jump in and add anything that I'm missing, just feel free to do so. So hiring an agent, one of the biggest things that I think is a misconception of buyers in this market is that if you go to a listing agent, you have an upper edge, or that you, again, this market is a little bit crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on. Maybe that's we should take a step back and talk about actually how the market is in terms of buying a home today. So that really also depends on what you're looking to purchase. The first time home buyer market and really that step up buyer market is a little bit competitive right now. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. If you're looking at higher end properties, those are taking a little bit longer to sell. So as a buyer, you have a bit more of an advantage. But in terms of hiring an agent, one of the things, whether it's a good market, a bad market, a seller's market, a buyer's market, one of the things that you really want to make sure of is that you're hiring somebody that's going to advocate for you during this entire process, and that person is looking out for your needs and solely your needs. You want somebody that's advocating for you during not just the negotiating process, but also during the appraisal, during the home inspection, and making sure that everything is taken care of. And again, when we do kind of that question and answer at the end, we can go over how everything gets paid. But one of the nice parts about hiring an agent as a buyer is that the commission is all paid for by the seller. So whether or not you go to the seller's agent, the seller is paying the same commission. So it's taken care of. It's one of the few things that's left in this world that is, an amazing service, that is an expensive service that gets taken care of pretty quickly or pretty easily by the seller. So hiring an agent just to really hold your hand, advocate through you, make sure that you're being represented and that you're taken care of and that your goals are being met. And that, everything is behind the scenes getting taken care of. So when you do hire your agent, the first step is going to be to get that pre-approval. So we would send you to Jason Kilduff to get your pre-approval. I'm going to stop talking for a few minutes and let Jason talk to you about that. And then the very next step from that would be us signing on to the MLS, creating your search, and starting to go take a look at some houses.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Like Danielle said, the first step is really to figure out what the banks could potentially approve you for a mortgage amount. And, we usually start, the bank is going to typically approve you for more than you're comfortable spending. So it's important to figure out what that number is and then kind of talk about your budget and your 5-year plan and any concerns or questions that you have. We'll take a look at your credit. We'll review your income. We may ask to review other financial documents depending on your current situation. But usually the whole entire pre-qualification process can be done relatively quickly, usually in the same day. But it's important that we take some time and figure out what's going to work the best for you, payment-wise, property type, things like that. So we have as much information as possible. And the earlier you start to do this, the better off you truly are, because in certain instances, there's things that we can do midstream to maybe improve your credit or to give you an idea about down payment. You may have a little bit of time before you're planning on buying, and that's great. It's still a perfect time to get pre-qualified early, right? There's a lot of things we can figure out and a lot of things that we could do to potentially set you up for success or improvement as far as terms and conditions of the overall mortgage go. We do offer essentially any type of mortgage that you've ever heard of, we can do, whether it be VA, FHA, USDA, conventional financing. There's a ton of options. So our job during that is is to kind of spell out what your options are, set you up for success and get you well prepared. And that's really it. You want to be prepared when you get out there and start looking at houses so that you're able to write the offer as soon as you find a house that you like.
Totally, Jason. And I want to apologize. I kind of jumped over the introduction and didn't even say hello to Richard Witt and Ryan Keating. So I know I'm going to introduce you guys in a few minutes, and I keep telling you to jump in, but I just wanted to say hello and introduce you back in, and also take a minute to kind of get your take on the market and how 2021 is starting out, because I'm seeing it on the real estate side. It had slowed down a little bit towards the mid to end of December, and the amount of stuff that our team is putting under now is pretty impressive. So it seems like it's picking right back up.
We're seeing it on our end, Danielle. I agree with you totally. It did have that little slowdown. I think the only thing impeding things now at all is there's just no inventory. I'm hearing that across the board from my agents in all the counties in Connecticut, that they've got the clients, they've got the buyers, they just don't have the homes to sell them. And that's the major issue. But yes, we've seen a tremendous pickup. I probably cannot recall a better January in my career at this point, because usually it's a quiet period, but it's not the case at this point at all. And if there were more homes for sale, it'd be even busier.
Yeah, I agree. Are you seeing that too, Jason?
It is crazy. I mean, usually it's really ironic if I have to pre-qualify someone on a specific property, and I get another call 10 minutes later for another client that's interested in that same property. Over this past weekend, I had 4 clients interested in one property.
Yeah. So that's another thing that I kind of jumped right over in the very beginning, was the state of the current market and what it looks like to be a buyer in today's market. And I think when we kind of go over the process, you miss that little market update. The buying market in Connecticut is like nothing I've seen in my decade plus career. And that doesn't mean that it should be intimidating. I'm a huge, obviously I'm a real estate agent, but I'm a huge advocate of home ownership, of the dream of home ownership, of helping everybody be able to do that. And with the interest rates the way that they are, and I mean, it's crazy how low they are. And with what's out there right now, is it a good time to buy? Well, it's a great time to borrow money. So if you can find the right house and you're working with the right team and you can get the right product, are you looking to sell in 2 years and make a profit? Well, then we have to talk about, a different set of priorities. But if you're looking for a home that you're going to be in for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, absolutely. But this market also brings with it a whole nother set of challenges that we haven't seen here in Connecticut, where you're getting outbid by $25,000, $30,000 by properties that aren't appraising, but it doesn't matter because you're up against cash buyers and they're waiving that appraisal. How do you win out on properties like that? Well, that's one of the main reasons why you hire an experienced agent who works with a really, really great team of experts that can guide you through this, because there are 100% ways where, I mean, you guys see it, we're putting stuff under contract all the time. And there's techniques and strategies to it. Jason touched a little bit about that, but one of the big things is getting started early, getting your information into your lender and making sure that you're not just pre-qualified, but that you're pre-approved. If you are going to go ahead and do financing, which most people do have to, unfortunately, get financing, or fortunately for you, Jason. So once you're pre-approved, essentially it's, a matter of getting an appraisal done on a property, and then you're as good as a cash buyer. So that's one of the things that we can do to give you an upper edge. The other thing that we've been doing is Jason will talk to the listing agent and let them know, hey, not only is this client pre-approved, but they're super on top of everything. And, their assets are great. Their income looks great. We can get this done in 2 weeks. There's no question about it. So he can give us that upper edge too. So even though it is a challenging market, there's a ton of advantages, or not advantage, there's a ton of good reasons to still be a buyer in today's market, and there's plenty of people to help you achieve that goal. So once you are pre-approved or pre-qualified, what we're going to do is set you up on an MLS search, which is a multiple listing service. It's essentially the same stuff that you're seeing on the public websites like Realtor and Zillow, but it's up-to-date live information that comes to you immediately, and it's an interactive portal, so we can see what you're looking at, you can see what we're looking at, we can kind of make comments back and forth. And then we do the fun part, we go start looking at houses. You know, we narrow down what your goals are, what you're looking to achieve, all that good stuff, what your monthly payment is. And again, as we get into the pre-approval and financing, Jason will probably talk to you a little bit more about what you're actually approved for will most likely be more than you want to spend. And the number that you should be focusing it on, especially with interest rates so low, is your monthly payment, because some people really get stuck on, and Jason, I'll let you jump in right now, because I think that's something that I don't want to forget to touch on, and is so important, is that when you're looking at the number, if somebody's, let's just use round numbers for instance, a $200,000 mortgage versus a $225,000 mortgage, in terms of a monthly payment, the difference of that might be, well, is pretty minimal, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's only, you've got to figure, I always use round numbers. Let's talk about $4 per thousand.
Okay.
Finance cost, right? Maybe even a slightly lower than that, depending on what program you are in and what the rates are. So it doesn't, you know, $225.
So every $10,000 is about $40 a month.
About $40.
Right. So again, everything that we're talking about is making sure that you understand what that looks like to you, so that you're not making decisions if you're, again, talking about round numbers. If we're looking at a house that's worth $200,000 but needs $100,000 worth of work, or a house that's worth $250,000 but doesn't, you know, need anything, and that's going to cost you what, $200 extra a month for an extra $50,000 in a loan. So it's putting things like that into perspective. Also putting into perspective, if that you have a number of, I want to spend $350,000 on a house, but you see what that looks like in a monthly payment, that might not be something that you actually want to do, even though you are qualified for it. But again, we start looking back to finding your house. We start taking a look at the house. Once we get a house under contract, or once we find a house that you want to make an offer on, we go through the whole process. But basically, what we do is we write up what is ideal for you in terms of closing dates, inspection contingencies, deposits, based on the situation. So if we're in a multiple offer situation, we're going to be guiding you towards something a little bit different than if it's, you know, a property that's been on the market for a year and a half and we have a lot of negotiating power. But typically in this market, our power doesn't come until we're under contract. So making the offer as pretty and appealing to the seller as we can is very, very important in this initial phase. So once we have an offer accepted, our next step is really, there's a few. This is kind of where the fire gets lit and everything starts happening. So one of the things that is the most important is getting everything done up front and quickly, and getting our team going on the contract right away. So once we have an offer accepted, the way that works is we submit your offer, we negotiate everything verbally back and forth with the seller. Once we come to terms, we write all of those terms up. You sign off on that. The seller signs off on it. Once both parties have signed, the term is that it becomes executed, and we start counting the dates from there. There's two main contingencies in our contract typically, which are your home inspection contingency and your mortgage contingency. And those both have very specific dates in the contract. Usually they're 14 days for your home inspection and about 30 to 40 days for your mortgage contingency, depending on what's going on in the market, how backed up the appraisers are. If you're pre-qualified or pre-approved, that makes a big difference. So if you're only pre-qualified and you haven't gotten Jason and the lenders all the documents they need, it can take longer. If you're not getting them accurate information, it can take longer. So, but typically we're looking at 14 days for a home inspection and about 30 to 40 days for a mortgage commitment. And then once we have that contract back, which is within 24 hours, the best thing that we can do, we're going to talk about ideal situations and ideal circumstances here, is get that off to the lender so he has the contract and is in front of him, and Jason can start working on that. Get everything over to attorney Richard Witt so that he can review the contract, make sure everything looks good, all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, that there's no weird contingencies in there. Obviously, if there was, we would be getting his advice ahead of time. And then also getting our insurance binder ready and talking to Ryan and an insurer about the particulars of our property, because there are definitely people think that insurance is pretty quick and easy and it can happen at the end. And when you work with somebody like Ryan, he can work miracles and usually have that happen. But in Connecticut, we deal with things like knob and tube wiring. We deal with some properties that are out in the boonies and they're a little ways away from a firehouse, or they have a volunteer firehouse, and those insurance rates can be higher or trickier to get. I know from personal experience, I have a flat roof, and that took a while to get my homeowner's insurance. We had to have somebody come out and take a look at it, do a property inspection. So just to kind of, again, have me stop talking for a minute, Richard and Ryan, you want to kind of pop in on this step of the process, kind of where you jump in with the clients and why you like to get them going early, some of the pitfalls that can happen.
Well, I like to get the contract. I always get the contract from you guys about the same time after Jason gets it. Naturally, we always want to see our clients pre-approved. I just this week lost somebody who was only pre-qualified, went through all the inspections, spent a lot of money on different things, used a lender I've never worked with before, and they were never pre-approved, which means they actually weren't qualified. And the deal basically fell apart after a lot of money was spent on my buyer's behalf. And sadly, a cash buyer came in and swooped in as a backup offer, and they got the home. So it's what Danielle said, what you said is so important about the pre-approval versus the pre-qualification. I can't stress it enough. But we get the contract in from you. When we see Jason's involved, we know right away, Danielle, that they've been pre-approved. Rarely do we have any issues after that point. We order immediately a title search once the retainer is signed, so we don't have to wait 3 to 4 weeks to find out if there's an issue with the home. We search 40 plus years on the land records. The title company does the search. Anything that is an issue, it gives us enough lead time to resolve it, get clean title to Jason. There are issues. There's always usually something. And 99.9% of the time they're resolvable, and we seek a solution and we get it to the closing table. But that's because we've had enough time to do it. I've had some attorneys who wait for the approval letter with no conditions before they order that title search. And then the week of the closing, you find out there's issues, and that can cause a lot of issues. So, and I think the most important thing is in the very beginning, when I get a file, we put Jason on the email. We put everybody involved. We put Danielle, any Miale team member is on that initial email to the client. So, and I think, Danielle, one thing we don't stress enough, and I always say that these seminars is, unlike other groups or other teams, we just take it for granted that we're available 7 days a week. I've called Jason plenty of times on a Saturday and Sunday. Every Miale team I know member answers their phones 7 days a week, and so do I. It's on my card. So I think that's the key that makes a difference. And if there's a negotiation issue or there's a problem, we're there to handle it almost simultaneously in real time.
Absolutely. And that's huge, especially in this market of multiple offers and bidding wars. Having your people available when you need them is it makes you able to do business at the level that we do it. So yeah, no, it's huge. It's huge. Is Ryan here?
Yep. Yeah, I'm here. So so you have a flat roof, huh?
I have a flat roof.
Yeah. Yeah,
Those are fun.
we don't see many of those, unless it's, you know, a larger building, I guess, or contemporary modern design.
Mine's actually old, so I have a couple things. Built in 1863 with a flat roof. It's an old federal colonial.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So knob and tube, flat roof, you name it, we got it.
Yeah, and that's actually, a lot of carriers are starting to really tighten up their underwriting guidelines. Some of them won't insure houses built in 1960s become a year that they're using, to really say, you know, solidify classes of business. So one thing, I guess, working with a company like the Keating agency, we have a variety of different carriers to find the best fit for the property that someone is buying. Each carrier has different things that they do better. Like some will write flat roofs, some won't. Knob and tube is pretty much an across the board issue. So if there is an old home with knob and tube that an inspector picks up, generally a letter from a licensed electrician saying that it's either deactivated or it will be removed. We have not had problems with getting everything pushed through. And usually there's a 30-day or so clause that it does get remediated. So that does not hold up the closing there. And you mentioned location too. So protection class is a big factor as well, where I think it takes like 3 to 5 minutes or maybe 5 to 7 minutes for a house to pretty much fully go up and be a total loss of damage if there's a fire. So that response rate makes where you're located, you're going to pay more insurance because the likelihood of a larger loss versus where you are in a suburb or somewhere with the fire department down the road that's going to get there in a minute, it prevents the damage. And some of those can be a couple $100 difference that prices you out of a mortgage. And that's one of the things too, depending where you're looking. A lot of the good realtors know that and can help guide you. But
Totally. So
yeah,
in terms of some of the stuff that's come up that you wouldn't see, so when you're working with a real estate agent who really knows what to look for, knows New England, knows this area, we're going to be looking at that type of stuff for home inspection anyways. We don't want you to be surprised by anything during a home inspection, that a roof is 30 years old, that we see knob and tube, that the hot water heater is leaking all over the place, that the oil tank is all rusted. All that stuff that we can visibly see, we're going to be pointing out to you as we're walking through a home so that you know what you're making an offer on before you make that offer. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need a home inspection, because you 100% do. You want somebody taking a really hard look, spending hours, an expert looking at the house and opening and closing every window, taking a hard look at all of that. And most importantly, looking at things that we're not able to see during a walkthrough, like your septic, like a well, like the attic and the roof, sometimes the chimney. Things that we're not able to see are really the stuff that comes up on a home inspection. But Ryan, what are some of the stuff that like we wouldn't be able to see, or we might not think of, that could be an issue with getting homeowners insurance on a property?
well, so part of it actually comes after the fact too, because the insurance companies do inspections themselves, and that's changed a bit where they're starting to kind of do more self-inspection. So they'll have the homeowner take pictures of certain assets of the house, of the pipes, of this, or you can, I've said it's simpler to submit the inspection report, but
Yeah.
at the other times, the inspection report that a good inspector does, you don't always want to send that to an insurance company because they're going to look at every little detail and be like, oh, well, wait a minute. So some of that, usually it would be exterior inspections. So they'll look for trees where your roof is. So if there's a overhanging tree and branches, they might want you to get those cut back, because like, I think, this last year we had 2 or maybe 3 large windstorms. And we don't get the tropical storms per se and high winds, but we did. So things like that. And I guess coastal. So depending where you are in Connecticut as well, in New England, that's going to come into more effect than the greater Hartford area.
You know
So
what,
things-
that brings up a really good point about coastal too, but even more than that, the Connecticut River that runs straight down our state. Areas that you would never think of that are in a flood zone are in a flood zone. And that's the stuff that comes up that you want to address again, right up in front off the bat. And Rich, I want to get back to you too on title, because I want to explain that a little bit more
Well, and I'll
to
just say
buyers that might not be aware of it.
quickly on flood
Yeah.
too. So what we've noticed is a lot of people are buying homes and the prior homeowners did not have flood insurance because they didn't have a mortgage. And so
Mhm.
usually the lender is requiring the flood insurance because their money's at risk. But someone that bought a house for $50,000 and it's paid off for after 30, 40 years, that never came up in their personal portfolio or anything like that. So it's become more common. You can't compare what someone's paid, and it's depending on the zone, they can get fairly pricey too.
Correct. And a lot of times it wasn't even zoned as a flood zone when that previous owner had it. They didn't know. Everything that has gotten rezoned in the last 10, 15 years. So you're seeing some of that stuff come up too.
We are, and I know FEMA's doing a big adjustment as well. But if you're near a body of water, it's definitely good to look at.
Yeah,
And then you
we
can
see
also-
it quite a bit in Glastonbury and in Cromwell. You know, the towns
Bristol.
that are on the river. Yeah, places that you wouldn't think. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Rich, I wanted to get back to you real quick too, in terms of some of the things that you guys look for on your end up front to make sure that this transaction goes smooth. Really, the biggest thing is probably title, correct? And title insurance, and in a town or a state like Connecticut, where our properties have gone back into the 16 and 1700s. I imagine title searches are pretty important.
It's a great point, Danielle, because we didn't have zoning in Connecticut primarily, and there's still 2 towns in Connecticut that don't have zoning, but we didn't get zoning across the board until 1956. So meaning subdivision maps in full use, they were there. If there was a subdivision done, say a lot, West Hartford's better than most because there were a lot of planned streets. So there were maps and surveys done. But you go outside of West Hartford, you go outside of Glastonbury and a lot of these more rural towns, it's just 100 feet to the historic boundary, to the stone, to 200 feet to the tree. And how do you solve that? You do that by issuing a title insurance policy, one that protects the bank and one that protects the homeowner with boundary coverage. And it protects against any unknowns because we are a historic state going back to the 1700s, and farms have been subdivided and re-subdivided and re-subdivided. And that's the purpose of the search. They will go back 2+ owners, even if that means going back 80 years. If that family's owned it with the same title, they'll go back until there's 2+ owners. And anything that is, I just had one which we discovered had no access in Wolcott. There was just an ancient highway that was abandoned, and that took about 7 months of work to get that buyer into that. I was representing the sellers. We had to do a survey. We had to get title approvals. But they're fully protected now. They do have access, and there is a brand new survey. But if all that had not been done, that would have been a dead listing at that point for that seller. They would not been able to sell that property. But that's the purpose. We do the search early enough. We also do optional. It's only optional in outside of Fairfield County. Fairfield County, it is mandatory that we also, it's becoming a bigger issue, is we do the building department municipal search. That is optional. But we do offer that in our retainer letter, where we actually hire the searcher not to just do a 40-year land record check of the town clerk's records, but we send them down into the basement of the building department, pull the file particular on that property going back decades, and making sure that there was not work done and no permit pulled, or if the permit was pulled, that was never properly inspected and closed out.
Mhm.
And I just had one in West Hartford where, 3 major things were done in 2018, all by reputable contractors. It's just an oversight where all 3 forgot to call for the closing out of that permit. And we had to call the building department, who now does them through Zoom. And they were closed out a couple of days before the closing, and my buyer was allowed to then close. So
Yeah.
those are all the issues we're out there trying to resolve. Again, I want let everybody know on the seminar that we don't close unless there's clean title. Jason will not close unless there's a policy issued with no exceptions. That means that it's clean. So we work in battle to make sure that happens. It might take sometimes an extra week or two, but we deal with it and we get it done, and we make sure the buyer gets what they're bargaining for.
Correct. I've had it happen, and again, clear title to make sure that nobody else has claims or rights to your property once you own it. I had one that was pretty unique. It was for a listing that we were selling, and when they purchased it, they had purchased it direct from the builder, and the builder, when he bought the land, had an invalid power of attorney. So then he never actually purchased the land that he then built the subdivision on that we were then trying to resell. So yeah, but they had title insurance and it covered it.
I got a quick question interruption. I know I've been hearing it more on the radio promoting the theft of people's property titles. I don't know, that just triggered that in my thought. Are you hearing that stuff, Richard? Or is that something that would come up that people don't expect?
Connecticut, we're seeing a lot of that, and I get a title fraud newsletter. A lot of it seems to be happening in urban areas, New York, New Jersey, some parts of Florida. They seem to be preying on the elderly, where I'm seeing those transfers done because there's sometimes in a nursing home, but the family has like an absentee landlord situation with the property. They're not paying attention. But the majority of the ones we're seeing are people are, just thinking they're selling the property, but they're not. It's a fraudulent straw buyer who doesn't know, they just basically trick an older person or elderly person or somebody who's mentally infirm to sell them the property. They never actually get the funds, or they just know that the person is in a, like I said, again, mentally infirm or in a nursing home, and they just do a quick claim and fraudulently sign the paperwork as them and to a fraudulent buyer as well, and then try to sell it and get the proceeds. And a couple of them have been caught, but a lot of them haven't been. And it basically, the two that I read in the fraud directory, I was very proud. They were both not attorneys, they were both paralegals who suspected through reading the title search that something was wrong with the deeds, something was wrong with the witnessing. And each time, one was in Georgia, I believe, and one was in Florida, the paralegals alerted the title company, who then did a deep dive on these backgrounds on these sellers and buyers, and found out they were fraudulent buyers, and the deed that was transferred was from a fraudulent seller. And all the while, the person was in a nursing home where all this was going on. But it was caught by two paralegals and two separate law firms. So.
Interesting.
But it's critical, like I said, for the title searcher. My staff literally has been trained to read their title searches like any attorney that's been out there. I've searched over 2,000 titles myself before I took myself off the road to concentrate just on primary closings. And literally, you have to read every page of that report. We read every note that's put in there. The notes, it's like a little encyclopedia and addendum, and we tear those apart because sometimes there's a word or two in there and it just triggers, and then immediately they come to me and we just go over it with title counsel and try to get resolved or not close until we can assure we get the clean title. So.
Interesting. So this is getting a little technical, which I absolutely love, and hopefully some of our listeners are also in that process. But I just want to again reiterate that during this process, one of the major things that you want to have on your side are people advocating for you who know this, because it's an awesome process. I love working with home buyers. It's one of my favorite things to do because you get to help them achieve one of the life's biggest dreams, right? And especially in a market like today, they're getting an amazing interest rate. It's like win, 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 win. But you want to make sure that everything is good during the inspection. You want to make sure that everything is good during the title search, that there's nothing crazy in the deed, that there's not some weird encumbrance where your neighbors can have tailgate parties on your backyard. You want to just make sure that everything is set, and that your product is insurable, that it's a good asset, that everything is good to go. So there's a ton of stuff, many different stories that us, again, no offense, Ryan, I think you're the youngest, but us old dogs here can tell a lot of these stories. But at the end of the day, the main thing is that we all come together, figure out ways to get it done, and we do it every day. So it might sound a little bit tricky. It might sound a little bit intimidating. It's not. It's a really great process, and we're all here to help. The other thing with our team is that there's never any obligation. So whether it's the beginning of your search, if this is something that you're just starting to investigate, reach out for us, and we'll go over in particular the whole process, what it looks like in terms of the legal side of things, what it looks like on the mortgage side of things, insurance, and what it looks like in terms of buying the house overall. So if there's any questions that you have, the best thing that you can do is reach out, inform yourself, get educated, and then make those decisions. So once we are through, so again, to kind of back it up, when we find our home and we make an offer and the offer is accepted, we have our inspections done. Typically, we do those within 2 weeks. If we have to make our offer super pretty and appealing to a seller, we might limit that down to a 7-day period. If you are a seasoned home buyer and or a contractor or a home inspector, we're doing something on an investment and you want to waive that home inspection, that is something that I'm going to try to talk you out of. But if we don't, we're going to figure out a way to go on to make sure that at least the septic and the well and all of that is taken care of. But 99.9% of the time, we're doing a full home inspection to make sure everything is set. Once that home inspection is done, based on our contingency date, whether we have 7 days or 14 days, what it means is that we have to have all inspections done and all the reports back and anything to the seller that we're asking for them to fix or credit us back for within that time frame. And we put that in writing. Again, this is something that we would go over in more detail during a buyer consultation, exactly how that works. But the inspection process is done right away. We don't waste time. You go under contract, we inspect that property quickly, make sure that it looks good to go. If there's anything that comes back that's unacceptable, we negotiate it. This is really the time in this market that buyers have the most power. During the initial set of negotiations, depending on if it's a multiple offer situation, or if there's a ton of interest, or if it's been on the market for a long time, and we did have a little bit more negotiating power, but typically right now your negotiating power comes during a home inspection, and they always find something. New construction is a little bit different. Again, we would talk about that during a buyer consultation, but in Connecticut, you have a 1-year warranty. So I typically have my buyers do that inspection at around the 9-month mark after they've lived there for a while, so that we can then take advantage of that warranty. But for most buyers that are buying a house in Connecticut, in this state, you're looking at properties that are built anywhere from the 1800s up until the 2000s. And even houses that were built 3, 4, 5 years ago, stuff comes up. So there's always that second set of negotiations. The way that I typically like to work with my buyers is to let them know up front when we're walking through a house what's going on. If it's a 30-year-old roof, if it's an older furnace or boiler, if you can see that the ground is touching the siding and we're starting to have some rot, if there's mold, we know all of that stuff ahead of time. And that's how we're making an offer on the property. We're making it based on the condition of the house as we see it. However, when that stuff comes back and it comes back in a written report, it looks it can look a little bit daunting. And we do have some power in going back to sellers and saying, hey, look at all this stuff that came back, and negotiating either a credit or for them to do some repairs. either way, the big thing on this is making sure that there's nothing hidden, that you're moving forward and you don't close on a property and find out, 2 weeks later that the roof needs to be replaced or that the furnace needs to be replaced, that, you're going in with this eyes wide open, you know exactly what you're getting into. Once that's taken care of and we're done with the inspection contingency and we move on from that, the next step is finalizing your mortgage and getting what's called your mortgage commitment. So again, I'm going to zip it and hand this over to Jason Kilduff, and he will let you know exactly what you need to do to make that happen.
Perfect. So once you do go under contract, usually the first step is we want to have a quick 15-20-minute call, review any questions. We're going to update your application to be specific to that property. We're going to talk about, finalizing the loan program, and we're going to ask you for some documents. Typically, it's last 2 years W-2s, 30 days of pay stubs, 2 months of bank statements, and a few other things. Once we gather all that and we have your initial disclosure, which is the whole entire application package, it's going to tell you all about the mortgage and the mortgage process. We're going to get that signed and we're going to submit it to underwriting. Now, underwriting is the department that reviews all of your pay stubs, all of your bank statements, your tax returns, and they make sure that what we have on the application matches what you provided us with in your documentation. Once the underwriter goes through that information, we're going to get a preliminary approval. That usually comes out while we're waiting for the appraisal to be returned. Once the appraisal's back and the underwriter may ask for another couple of items, we'll submit the appraisal into underwriting with the remaining items. And once that comes out, we should receive a conditional commitment, right? Now, your conditional commitment may come out and it may say, okay, well, we're just waiting for maybe homeowner's insurance or title documents, just some things that are still kind of lingering. We get those cleaned up and the mortgage commitment should go out on time per the contract, and it should be free of any conditions that could jeopardize you getting that loan. So we want to make sure the income's signed off, the assets are clear, the title's good. And at that point, we'll give our commitment to lend you the money, essentially. And once we have that, and we have what they call the clear to close, which means you're officially able to close on your loan, the attorneys will be notified and the attorneys will begin scheduling and sharing numbers back and forth as far as any adjustments that may have come up during the mortgage process. So the commitment date is really the date that the bank says, okay, you're approved and we're ready to go.
All right, awesome, Jason. And that's really the date too, when I'm, during the bio consultation, when we're going over all the very specifics of it. The way that the contracts are written in Connecticut, they're really written to protect the buyer more than they are the seller. And I have this conversation with my sellers too. Very rarely are sellers entitled to your deposit. But the two major contingencies are that inspection contingency. So during the first 14 days, the first 7 days, whatever our contingency is, when you have that home inspection, if anything comes up that's unacceptable to you, you have the right to terminate the contract. You don't have to give the seller an option of a credit or an option of a repair. You can, with reason, terminate the contract and get your deposit back. Your second thing is your mortgage commitment. If you've put in, your due diligence and everything was done so that you could get your mortgage, but for some reason you lost your job or something happened and you weren't able to get that mortgage commitment, your deposit's also protected as long as we're within that date. Once we're past this contingency, once we have our contingency set for our inspections and for our mortgage commitment, that's the time that your deposit becomes, correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, but that's the time that the sellers are entitled to your deposit if you were
Correct.
to terminate.
Yep. It's exposed. Yep.
Yeah. So really those are our two big dates, and those are the dates that we will not let you forget. Those are the dates that everybody on our team tracks to make sure that we make them. Again, in Connecticut, and we'll go over all of this stuff as we're going through the process and during a real buyer consult, but there is no time is of the essence in the contract. So if we had to, we could fight for it. But really, those are the dates that you want to meet and stick to. Because Richard, you don't like doing those fights, right? Time
No.
is of the essence. There's nothing in there. It's
No.
ridiculous.
That's right. That's right.
Right? That's why you have to work with an
Right.
agent that's on top of it, and then you don't have to deal with any of that.
Yep.
Yeah. So once you have your clear to close from Jason, that you then get your closing docs, and that takes 3 days, right? Still, we're doing the 3 days before we can actually schedule a closing once you have your closing docs.
Well, once we get a preliminary CD out or closing disclosure that has some preliminary numbers on it, that 3-day waiting period begins then. Typically,
Okay.
we will get that out to the borrower prior to the clear to close.
Okay.
Okay.
So we can get clear to close and then close the next day.
Yeah, closing the very next day after the clear to close is a little bit tough, but within a day or two, for sure.
But I heard you say it, and now I'm going to
It's
hold you
doable.
to it.
As long as the CD is out and acknowledged.
He's done it. I've seen him do it.
Yeah.
We've
I
done
heard
it.
you say it, and now I'm going to hold you to it. No, I know you've performed miracles. So once we have that clear to close and really a closing date scheduled, a closing time scheduled, our next step is one of the final steps is our final walkthrough. And we want to wait until a seller is completely moved out before a final walkthrough, because the point of that is to make sure that you are taking occupancy of exactly what it is that you wanted to purchase, so that the refrigerator, that Sub-Zero refrigerator and Wolf stove, they didn't swap it out for, the old refrigerator and stove that was in their basement. When they were moving out the couch, it didn't expose a huge hole that's in the wall behind it, that they didn't leave you. This is what we see more often than not sellers taking things that they're not supposed to, but sellers leaving a ton of stuff that they're not supposed to in basements and garages and attics. Because once you close, that house is yours. So once we have that closing time, we typically like to schedule that final walkthrough pretty close to that closing time, within reason, so that if something does come up, we have time to address it, and we really give the attorneys time to figure that out, because that's when Richard comes in strong. So if there's any issues at the final walkthrough, we really hand that over to the attorneys. Depending on what it is, we take pictures of it, and I'll let Richard talk a little bit more about that. But there are a few different options if something happens at the final walkthrough. Where, Richard, what can we do?
I mean, generally, luckily in this area, most of the closing attorneys all know each other. We've
Yep.
got each other's cell phones because there's been so many issues in the past, so makes it a lot easier. Usually get a direct line to the attorney, and primarily we try to get that issue resolved that day, and so we can give the buyer peace of mind. We try to get, closed, maybe perhaps we close at 10 o'clock, hold the file in escrow for a couple hours till a plumber can come out by noon, or 1 o'clock, or an electrician, and get that issue resolved for good. There's the rare occasions where, a credit has to be given, and then, we've rushed it back to the lender, and they've done amazing jobs where it's a slight credit, but it still has to be approved by underwriting. And then we just start, giving the go ahead to do it. And then we just change the closing document, and with Jason's permission, grant that credit at the closing. So there's a lot of things, but again, I think the critical thing is that fine balance Danielle said, is of doing it early enough, close enough to the closing, but early enough to give the attorneys time, coming to I just had one where I was told 15 minutes of the closing, I asked if everything was okay, and nobody had ever told me that there were walkthrough issues. So I was really finding out in real time, and the other attorney didn't know either. So we both had to scramble, and we did get the items resolved. We were able to get a plumber out there and get the items moved out that were in contention. But just a little breathing room always helps. It does help.
100%. Yeah. And one of the reasons why you want to do it closer to the time of the closing rather than, why wouldn't we do it
Yep.
2 days ahead of time if the buyer or if the sellers have already moved out? The reason being is that if a pipe burst,
Yep.
if somebody broke into a house, if anything happened during that, the last 24 or 48 hours while that, we hadn't seen it, it still becomes your issue. And we've seen it all. I've seen hot water heaters that are on second floor units, heating auxiliary bathrooms leak, and it comes through the ceiling. or pipes burst and it comes through the ceiling. So we've seen stuff where I had one where a seller was getting divorced and one party had moved out and the other party hadn't and was refusing to during the walkthrough. So
Yeah.
you have all kinds of stuff that comes up. But the major thing is that there's different options and it all comes down to really what you're comfortable with. Again, knock on wood, we're talking about a lot of different circumstances here that, if everything were to happen that we had talked about today, you would have an old house with a flat roof, knob and tube wiring, an FHA chattel mortgage, and there would be encumbrances and title issues with it. So that would be like worst case scenario. That never, ever happens. But when something does come up, we're able to figure it out and guide you through it so that you can make the decisions that you're most comfortable with. And there are options. You can close on a property. Let's say your rate lock is expiring and you need to close that day or you need to move in that weekend. You can hold money in escrow, meaning that a portion of the seller's proceeds, again, this all has to be negotiated and agreed to, but a portion of their proceeds gets held until that issue gets resolved. Like Richard was saying, you can have a plumber go over, we can delay a closing for a couple hours, or if there's something major, we push it off until we're ready to go and everything makes sense. But at the end of the day, anything that comes up, we're able to navigate and help you work through. So anything that I missed, gentlemen?
No.
No? Okay, let's see if I remember how to get to the next slide. All right, there we go. There's Jason. So Jason Kilduff, this is just a little bit about him, but he is CEO of Ward Kilduff Mortgages. He's been doing this for a long time. So Jason, just want to give a little bit of information about what you do and why you do it.
Absolutely. So I went out with my business partner, Greg Ward, and founded Ward Kilduff Mortgage at the end of '06 after a lengthy career with what was at the time First Union National Bank, and which eventually turned into Wachovia, then Wells Fargo. I was doing mortgages there, obviously, for quite a number of years. We went on our own in '06, been doing it ever since. We do everything by referral and word of mouth. We really take our clients' interest and we're vested in their transaction and definitely in their happiness in their future home. We help a lot of people close. We have access to some of the best programs and rates and terms and conditions on the market. And we make sure the process goes smoothly to the best of our ability. And we're always, always available. Definitely always available via email, text, cell phone. So if anything ever were to come up or you had a quick question, only a phone call away. Thanks.
One of the reasons why I want to stop and give a shout out to Jason and Ryan and Richard, but one of the things that our team is really adamant about, Matt is the founder, and he's just so big on people and who he partners with and why he partners with them and why we work with them and the relationships that we have. And there's never any kickbacks, there's not reciprocation. It's because we work the same way, right? We all want to get to the same level. We all want to serve our clients the same way. And I can attest for Jason, your commitment to your job and to what you do is unparalleled in your business. It's phenomenal. So it's awesome working with you. You always get it done. And I never have any doubts when I send my clients your way, Ryan's or Richard. So we appreciate you guys a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle.
So next, you can send me the check later. Yeah. So Richard, how about you tell us a little bit about your firm?
Well, we've got 2 office locations and a field office in Fairfield, but we're in West Hartford Center and in Plainville on Route 10. I've been practicing since '98. I started off with a very large firm in New Haven and then just found that I wanted to service my clients better and went off my own. We've got 7 closing paralegals who basically there's no voicemail during the day. If you get their voicemail, it's only because they're on the phone. There's usually multiple backups to try to assist. And I try to take the intimidation out of dealing with a law firm out of the picture by telling my clients up front, give me a call. My cell phone's on the on the business card, and there's no additional charge unless you go to litigation or something like that. 99.9% of the time, it's just a phone call to me, and I'll be glad to help you, just like any of my staff. And we just, like, what Danielle said is, we're all here for the same goal. We start at the beginning with you, and our goal is to get it to the finish line, no matter what we have to do. And we always are all pushing in the right direction and the same direction. And I can't thank the realtors on the Miale team and Danielle enough of all the assistance I get, and the assistance I get from Ryan and Jason on just all the little pieces that need to go together to get it to the closing table. And some go very smoothly. There's a small percentage that don't, but for the most part, we all have the same result, which is the closing. So.
Yeah, we get it done, and that's one of the things too that is so nice about your firm, Richard, is that a lot of buyers do, a lot of sellers do, get intimidated when they hear attorney, and they don't want to call, they don't want to ask you questions, they don't want to, they're thinking that your clock starts and you're ticking
Right,
up those
exactly.
fees, and that's just not how you
Not
work.
the case.
Not at all. It's it's advice, and then you're like, wait, that's just the closing. But I mean, that's just you just constantly give. So it's very apparent, and it's awesome in your business. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
All right. And last but not least, Ryan. So Ryan, your business has been in business the longest, right? You are third generation?
Correct. Yes, and
That's
well, I was
awesome.
just gonna say on Richard, it's, you hear attorney, it's like when someone says police, they're actually not that bad.
Exactly.
Um, so it's
Most of
good to
them.
have them on your side. But yeah,
Thank
so
you,
the
Ryan.
Keating agency, my grandfather and grandmother founded the business, and then my dad's sister and I operate it now, and we have a team of about 12 or so in Southington that work with us on the back end side of things. But we have over 1,600 clients that we work with on their homeowners auto and a growing commercial business practice. So we've definitely seen it all and heard it all, and that definitely helps when people are buying their first home, or people got their first home, but now they've gotten to different places in life where insurance has more value than it did originally. And we've also noticed until people have a claim, you don't really understand or know how important insurance is. So, definitely here is a resource for people to ask and talk to us about really what insurance can do for them.
No, I imagine that there isn't anything but that between you and your sister, your dad and your grandfather, that one of you hasn't seen or figured out.
Yeah. So, and it's funny too, my sister's been here now a little over a year, and I've been back going on 4 years now. And it's kind of funny, those, like, you were saying before, some things can take a while and some things are really easy. It's great to get something that's a real clean, simple purchase. And then it just seems when we're starting, my sister's had a few things that have been kind of some stuff my dad's never seen before. And it's some of the first things she's working on. I had someone that had moved here from Texas, bought a house, and the next day their car was stolen. It was like, luckily everything was able to get into place, and their closing happened. I guess she had left the car here, flew back to Texas, and then one of her neighbors that she didn't really know was like, I don't think anyone's living there, but the car, they saw someone just, drop someone off at a car, get in, steal or something. It was pretty surreal.
That's crazy. No, and you're so right though, that people don't appreciate that or understand that until they have that claim. And, again, with the years that are in the business, if you don't know it, somebody who can figure it out and help you with it. And I think that's another thing with the four of us, with our teams, with our companies. Number one, we're all in business for ourselves. So our reputations mean the world to us. Our clients mean the world to us. Our referrals mean the world to us. It's huge that we do a great job for our clients and for our people. And number two, we're local. Right. So when you have an insurance claim, Ryan, you're in Southington, Jason, you're all over the freaking place. I'm not even going to pinpoint where you are because it's on any given day. And Richard, you're right down the street from us. So it's
Yeah,
we're
my neighbor's
local.
Ryan. Ryan's a couple
Exactly.
doors down from me.
Yeah, we're like, it's we're local, so your people are here, and when it comes time to, to get that through underwriting or talk to that processor or figure out that insurance binder, knowing who your people are and that they're here, that your underwriter isn't in Colorado and the processor isn't in New Mexico, and you have no idea what's going on. I mean, you can't say enough about that. So thank you guys very much for being here. I think we're running a little bit overtime. So I didn't see any questions pop up, but I'm gonna run through these really quickly. What if I don't have good credit? Well, then you are just SOL. No, I'm just kidding. If you don't have good credit, that's the main reason why you want to talk to somebody like Jason, because one of his favorite things to do is to advise people and get them ready for home ownership. So there's a lot of people out there that don't have good credit. And as long as you know what your plan is and you're working towards making it better and towards your goals, that's all that you can do. What does it cost to hire you? Absolutely nothing. We can go over that more in a one-on-one buyer consult, but 99.99999% of the time, the costs are incurred by the seller. And for that, I've been doing this for over 10 years and I've never had a buyer pay a commission. That's my answer for that. Is now a good time to buy? That's a really good question. And it depends on where you are in life, to be totally honest. You'd want to have that conversation. Money is really cheap right now. Inventory is really low. If you're looking to sell and make a profit in a year or two, probably not the right time to buy. If you're looking to buy a house and you're getting, you're starting a family or you're buying up, yeah, it could be a great time to buy because interest rates are crazy low. What type of financing is available? All kinds of different stuff where Jason, I'm going to put that screen up real quick, but you'll have all of our information and he's the one to go to. But there's stuff, Jason, pop in real quick. You can do as little as 0% down right now, correct?
Yeah, there's programs with no money down.
But for the most part, is if you have 3.5 to 5% down, you're pretty solid.
Yeah, or there's 3% down,
Yeah. Okay.
There's a bunch of different options. It's so custom tailored to like
Yeah.
the reasoning and the person and the credit score and
The interest rates and the amount,
Yeah.
like all of that, right?
yeah, so we try to, it's not just a one mortgage fits all. It's really something that's specific to the needs and wants of the client.
Okay, awesome. How much money do I need to put down? You just answered that. It can be anything from 0 to 20 to all of it. So it depends. And that's a really good question too. With interest rates the way that they are now, you might not want to put all your money down. You might be able to take that money and make more on it than you get it and borrow it. So again, those are questions that you want to talk to, and really based on your certain circumstances, your specific circumstances, you want to get advice that's tailored to you. The whole process, finding a house, once you've found that house and you're under contract, finding a house can take a little while, or it can happen the first house you see. But once you're under contract, typically it takes 30 to 60 days. You can push that out a little bit, but with rate locks and all that, you want to have it usually done by like 60 days. And how do I get started? Well, the very next page has all of our information. So if you want to get started, if you have any questions, there's never any obligation with any of us, but my information is right there. That's my cell phone number. You can call or text me on that number. There's my email and then our team's website. Jason for your lending needs, Richard for any of your legal needs, and Ryan for all of your insurance needs. Again, not if you guys need stuff outside of home insurance, auto, life, all of that, they handle it all. So anything that I missed out on, guys?
Great job, Danielle.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was my first virtual one, so I appreciate you guys bearing with me during this.
Last one was at the brewery. I remember that.
I
That was
know.
fun.
That was way better. I'm hoping that we all get our shots soon and we have mass immunization and we're good to go and we
Yep.
can be in public again. Because these are good, but the ones at the brewery are a lot more fun.
The
That's right.
in-person stuff definitely adds a nice touch.
It is. You can tell that we're like floating heads here in person. We're real.
I mean,
bodies.
that's what I noticed. I saw that you guys were putting these on, and I'm like, I like beer. I like talking about insurance. So
Exactly. Exactly. Win, win, win. So, well, thank you guys so much for being on this. We appreciate you and we appreciate everything that you do for our team and our clients.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, guys.